Hey everyone, and welcome back to Dallas Cowboys coverage as we face heartbreak once again. The Cowboys lose to the Packers in the first round of the playoffs, and just like that, your season is over. I'm gonna break it all down, the game itself, and the next steps. But it was disappointing. I mean, give me one word to describe that game. I think you can come out with a lot, but it was terrible. I mean, I think everything that could go wrong did, and there's just no excuse. I talked about it a few videos ago that, everything, all the pieces fell your way throughout this season. Even when it was pretty rough, it looked like the division was gone. You were going to have to settle for a wild card. You were going to have to play on the road, a team that could not play on the road all season in the Cowboys. But instead, the Eagles lose like all of their last games. Their downfall was somehow even worse than ours. And you win the division, not because you were going out and beating good teams, but because the Eagles lost. You win the division. You're set up for two, not one, but two home playoff games against inferior opponents. You would have played the Packers and the Lions. But instead, you go out first round, you know, against Green Bay. And I said I'm never going to take a playoff win for granted, but I couldn't help but look forward in these playoffs cuz you were supposed to win. A 7 seed has never in the history of the NFL, obviously this is new, beat a 2 seed. I know it's a new system, but still, it shouldn't happen. We saw what the Bills did to the Steelers. I mean, it's inexcusable. That's my word. It that could not happen, and I think it was in all of our nightmares, but it came true. And once again, and to the Packers no less. Just insult to injury on that front. But this was your chance for redemption. I felt like everything was falling the way you'd want. The Packers, you have a chance to knock them out. I was looking forward to eventually, hopefully you get to see the 49ers again. That's the game I was worried about. I should have been worried about this one. I got ahead of myself, I guess, but you know, the way I saw it is you were favored in two playoff games. That's how it was going to work out. You're supposed to beat the 7 seed. You're supposed to beat the Lions. You've already beat them this season. Instead, you don't even get that chance. You get absolutely blown out, in the wild card game. And it was pathetic. It was sad. I mean, on all fronts, it was just a terrible game. You know, it was terrible. I mean, you look at the box score, it doesn't look so bad. Dak had 400 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 100. For Jake Ferguson had 3 touchdowns. I give him credit if I have to name a player of the game. But this team, I mean, it was all garbage time. It was, all second half. Dak, for the first time in his career, didn't have a single passing yard in the first quarter. Everything that could go wrong did. And, it was from the get go. I think Dak is to blame for sure, to some extent, but I think the people saying that Dak needs to go, I think that's an overreaction. He didn't allow all the points, he didn't allow the Packers to score on nearly every single drive, a touchdown no less. It was terrible. I mean, they scored literally on nearly every single drive. Aaron Jones, was getting comparisons to Walter Payton and Barry Sanders based on his statistics. I mean, he has, I think, 9 touchdowns against the Cowboys in like 3 games. I mean, it's inexcusable. It's sad, it really was. And it can't happen, The defense couldn't cover anything. I mean, I've seen so many saying they couldn't stop a parked car, which is accurate. I mean, there were times, you'd see players wide open, in an entire field, and you couldn't see a defender. It was pathetic. It was a true breakdown on all fronts. I mean, offensively, you kind of got going once the game was already over. Defensively, you never did. The defense just looked lost. I mean, you have just, it was, I think the most frustrating part is that you were so fortunate this season, and with everything that happened, you end up with this number 2 seed. You get to play at home. You're healthy. I mean, you lost, obviously, Trayvon Diggs at the very beginning of the year. Other than that, this team has stayed healthy. How many teams can say that in the playoffs? You didn't face the challenges, the hardships that you probably should have. I think this team got off easy this season, and still they're eliminated in the first round. It's just, there's no excuse at all. I mean, there's nothing to point to. It's not, 2016, it's, you're a young team, you're rookies, you're against Aaron Rodgers. That was the deal, right? It's Aaron Rodgers' fault. No, Jordan Love in his first real season cooked you. I mean, 2014, Des Cotted, whatever. There's, all these excuses everywhere. It's fine, okay? There's, whatever reason, nothing. No excuse for this game. Not one whatsoever. To lose. If you had lost by 1, it would have been inexcusable, but much less by, I don't even know what the final score was. I don't remember, and I don't care to look back because it doesn't reflect the game. I think it ended up being a 2-score game. No, you lost this game by, they doubled you up until you just went off in garbage time. It doesn't matter. You were shellacked at home by the worst team in the playoffs, worst team record-wise and seeding-wise. It's sad. It's sad, and that's another word, sad. It was terrible. Every facet, I don't even know, I'm not even going to go player by player here because it was just bad all the way around. So I'm not going to focus too much time on individual players, but your defense as a whole couldn't do anything. Micah Parsons had like 1 tackle. Your secondary disappeared. Literally, I couldn't see them half the time because there was just a receiver by himself. Dak and CeeDee Lamb looked like they just met in the first half and they didn't know how to throw to each other. They just forgot, I guess. It was bad. Your play calling, I think, went out the window. You played scared the whole game. I will talk more on a coaching standpoint, but it was bad. It was bad. And I don't even know what to say because there's not much to say other than you failed. This is the ultimate F game. It just, I don't know. I really don't. I think normally it's like, okay, here's where we go from here. This time it's tough. It really is because this is not how this was supposed to end. I know this team had weaknesses and, I never saw this team as perfect or, I think just quite what they needed to be to win a championship. I didn't expect that this year, I'll be honest. But I did expect this team to make it to the NFC Championship game. I did. Maybe that's just me being dumb and not not remembering past heartbreak. But no, I was looking at this logically as the fact that you are going to be favored in 2 playoff games to get there. You have to beat the Packers, who are the 7th seed, and the Lions, who you've already beaten. Both of these games at home where you haven't lost in 16 games. To me, that was doable. Not only was that doable, that was the expectation. The 49ers, to me, were the only team that should have been viewed as a threat. I believe they're the only team in the NFC capable of winning a Super Bowl. I hoped other than you, but, we saw what happened. The fact that you went out like this in the wild card round, it's pathetic. It's so sad to me because I felt like, despite this team's flaws, despite the defense one day looking like the doomsday defense going to win a Super Bowl, the next day looking like 2020's defense, I don't know. I don't know what happened to them. There were times where I said they could win a championship. I was wrong. I still believe in this unit. I do still believe in Dan Quinn. Answer me, though. Dan Quinn, do you want him back as defensive coordinator? He is lined up to interview for like 7 head coaching jobs. I do kind of think this might be the end. I really think he ends up back in Seattle. But let me know, do you want Dan Quinn back? I do. I still believe in him. I'm not going to let, some rough patches throughout the season undo everything he did in transforming this defense. And I think developing so many great young players in Trayvon Diggs and DaRon Bland and Micah Parsons. I still believe that he is a truly capable defensive coordinator, not a head coach, in my opinion. I don't think that replacing McCarthy with him is going to fix or solve anything. I know a lot of people were interested in that. I don't think probably after that performance, but I do still want him back. Let me know your thoughts, though, on Dan Quinn, and I'll talk more about coaching in just a moment. But, just again, back to just the big picture here. You had an opportunity despite this team's flaws, and you blew it. You did. I mean, you got the home games. You couldn't win on the road. Okay, you get to play at home. Couldn't do it. Your defense, has struggled, against good teams. You get 2 weaker teams to start the playoffs. Still didn't matter. When the lights are bright, this team, this Cowboys team, for the last going on now 30 years, just does not show up. And that was, my biggest concern with this team was winning against quality opponents. I didn't view the Packers as quality enough to be a threat. And maybe that's my mistake again for underestimating them. Maybe this team did the same thing, but it's inexcusable. No matter what way you want to twist it, the Packers are the 7th seed. Their offense is led by rookies and second-year players other than Aaron Jones. This team is so inexperienced compared to the Cowboys. It's just inexcusable to lose like that. I mean, the Cowboys have so much talent on this team, and this is why I believe that coaching is the biggest issue of all. I think Mike McCarthy should be fired. I just don't think that you can have a performance like that and get away with it, honestly. I mean, it felt like a crime, honestly, against Cowboys fans. But we got the announcement now today that Jerry Jones is going to stick with Mike McCarthy as head coach next season. And, I think it's the wrong decision. I really do. I really would have preferred you look at other coaches because to me, this team is too talented to lose, and to lose the way they did and as early as they did. You have 9 all-pro players on this team. 9. That's 2 more than the 49ers. That's way more than any other team in this league. I mean, 9 all-pro players across your team. And you can't win one playoff game against a team that had, let me think, none. I don't know that for sure, but I do not think the Packers had any all-pro players this season. I could be wrong. Maybe they had like 1, but I'm just picturing the roster in my head. I don't think so. You had 9. Your roster is so much better than theirs. I think running back is the one position where truly on paper the Packers are better than you. Still, you lost in that fashion. It's inexcusable, and that is a coaching failure. That is a coaching, just meltdown. I'm not saying that players aren't somewhat responsible, but when you have this much talent on this team, 7 Pro Bowlers, 9 All-Pros, and you can't win one playoff game against the 7th seed, against a team that is so far inferior to you, that is a coaching failure. And failure, honestly, doesn't quite even cover it. So, no, I don't think McCarthy should be back. Let me know your opinion. Do you think Mike McCarthy should get another year? No, I don't think he should, but let me know, your thoughts on that. I know it's harsh in the sense that, yes, he's had 3 straight 12-win seasons, playoff seasons, and no, that's not easy to do in the NFL. But what does that mean? If you can't win when it matters, over and over again, you can't win when it matters. You beat a Bucs team that was falling apart last season. That's not enough. That's not enough to show. It's not. And Mike McCarthy, well, he hasn't been, the worst coach. I think, honestly, he did a pretty good job over this regular season, but he has shown repeatedly that he cannot get the job done. To me, it's just a definition of insanity. Just, again, over and over again, for the last however long. I wasn't alive the last time we went to a conference championship or a Super Bowl or anything like that. It's insanity because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Sure, you brought in some different coaches, but it's all the same. Garrett, McCarthy, Wade Phillips. I mean, you can go back. Nothing really changes. And, that starts up top. I'll get to ownership in a minute, but it's frustrating because over and over again we get our hopes up, this vicious Cowboy cycle that the world makes fun of us for. But it's true. It's true. We beat up on bad teams throughout the regular season. We get our hopes up, and once again, our dreams are squashed in the playoffs. And you just want to run it back? I don't think so. I don't like that at all because it's just, again, I mean, Mike McCarthy, I will say, he improved as the season went on as a play caller because at the very beginning it was terrible. I mean, it was really bad. Your offense just was so stagnant. I give him credit for at the bye week specifically making those adjustments, and the offense improved. You had a historic season out of CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott was an MVP candidate. Another reason why I am not in favor of dumping Dak Prescott because, let me know if you want to do that. But where are you going to find another top 10, top 7, top 5 quarterback in this league, whatever you want to call him this season? Regular season wise, he was an MVP candidate. He was a top 5 quarterback in my eyes and in the eyes of anyone, I think, who is just looks at it from a real statistical just standpoint. He was great in the regular season. He wasn't good. He wasn't good on Sunday, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to find another quarterback that can replace him just like that. You have the 24th pick. You're not going to get Caleb Williams. You're not going to get Drake May. You're not going to get, you're not going to get any of those top quarterbacks where you're sitting. Trey Lance, I hope he develops one day. I don't know. He's not ready. He's not better than Dak. Not even close at this point. He needs time. You're not going to find a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. So I think that narrative does need to go away. It is tough, though, because, he's going to carry a $60 million cap hit next year. The idea was he gets a massive contract extension this offseason. And based on his regular season performance, yeah, I think he deserves it. But again, when you go out like this, it's just hard to give him the new richest contract in NFL history. It is. But it's tough because you can't carry that cap hit. So, you're not just going to cut him or trade him. The penalty would be just horrific. You're in a tough spot with him, and that's going to be a conversation, I think, for later in the offseason. But to me, getting rid of Dak Prescott doesn't fix anything. All you do is get worse. So, you don't have the means to replace him, and you don't have a way to get a quarterback equal or of greater talent than him. You just don't. So to me, that's just something that, obviously, he has not been perfect, but he has shown great progress. And, I do still believe in Dak Prescott. So my point behind this, though, is that Mike McCarthy did a good job with him. He had, one of his very best seasons of his entire career with Mike McCarthy calling his plays, and especially just looking contrary to last season, going from leading the league in interceptions to leading the league in touchdown passes. And that, that doesn't count for nothing. And I'm not giving McCarthy, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve any credit because he does. If Mike McCarthy was your offensive coordinator calling plays, I'd be fine with that. I would. I think, sure, give him another year. If he was your quarterback's coach, yeah, sure. That's fine, But he's not that. He's not an assistant. He's your head coach. And well, he is a good guy, I think. I think the players have bought into him. I think they like him. I think he's a good presence in the locker room. But he has not established a championship culture. And I don't think he ever will. Again, I just don't think that's who he is. I don't think he's the culture guy that you need right now. I think that he is just, washed in terms of a head coach. As an OC, do you know what? I think that'd be great. I think he'd do a good job in that role. You're not going to demote him. That's not going to happen. But I just don't think he's capable of being a championship head coach again. Jerry Jones in his statement today said, yeah, he's won championships before. We know his success. Okay, that was in 2011, 2010 season. That was now 14 almost years ago. Man, that sounds weird to say. But I just think that the league has passed him by. It was the reason he was fired in Green Bay. And I think that was the main reason you lost is because you were outcoached. You saw the creativity, what Matt LaFleur has been able to do with a young quarterback, with a young team, with nowhere near the talent player-wise that this Cowboys team has. And he just outcoached you. Mike McCarthy just, to me, is incapable of being a championship winning head coach. I just don't think he'll ever do it again. I really don't. Just the way he calls, the way he manages a game, just, this isn't 2010 anymore. It's not, it's 2024. And the league is continuing to evolve, with young head coaches. And I just think that he has not. And I give him credit for improving, and he can help a quarterback. He can be a good OC. I just don't think he can be the head coach that we need to win a championship and to bring a championship back home. I just don't think he is. So he's going to go in. This is the final year of his contract. So this is it. I'll be clear about that. This is it. His seat will be hot, red hot, all season long. And it's going to be, I'm not going to say championship or bust, but he has to show results, or else the Cowboys will move on. I believe that. I think they don't like to fire coaches. Jason Garrett, it was the same situation. His contract was allowed to expire, and he went off. I think it's going to be the same thing with Mike McCarthy. I think that this is probably going to be his final year, because I think once again, you're just not set up. I don't think he is built to win a championship. And to me, I just feel like you're setting yourself up for just yet another first round, second round exit, maybe. I hope that's not true. I hope that something changes, but why would it? It hasn't in all these years. I don't know what's going to be different next year, because with McCarthy as your head coach, I just don't think the level of change that's going to happen is going to. So, I was going to talk about some other head coaching candidates. Unfortunately, kind of doesn't matter at this point just because McCarthy's not going anywhere, but I will mention it briefly. I think that to finally change, the whole thing, to finally bring a championship back, I think you need to go young. I think you need a head coach that can be innovative, that can be different, that can adapt and adjust and just do what it takes to win in the modern NFL. If it were up to me, I would fire Mike McCarthy and I would hire Bobby Slowick. If you don't know him, he's the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. He has just such good experience on both sides of the ball. He comes from the Shanahan system. I will, if you didn't know, I'm sure you know about that tree by now. He was a coach under Mike Shanahan with the Redskins, back with Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel. Sorry, I slipped on his name there, and Matt LaFleur. 4 excellent coaches in the NFL right now. I think he's kind of seen as that next guy to come out of that system. He's only like 33, I think, years old, something like that. He has that young mind, and I think the work he's done in Houston with C.J. Stroud has been incredible. I mean, he has coached him to one of the very best rookie quarterback seasons of all time. It's been truly amazing what he's done. And again, with limited weapons on that team. I mean, they've grown, they've developed, and I give them credit for that. Their team, it's not bad, but I mean, they went from the number 2 pick to a playoff win. All of a sudden, they're better than you, even though they won 2 games last year. What does that show? The growth that team has. And I give so much credit also to DeMeco Ryans as head coach. I think he's, one of the finalists for head coach of the year for good reason. Look what you did in such a short time in Houston. You went from the worst team in the league to a playoff winning team. That's more than we have to say. And I just think that, both Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryans, two young, innovative guys, masters of the defense and offense, it's just so incredible what they've done. And I just would love to bring in someone like that. I just think that that's the answer, to fixing this, to going somewhere, to moving forward is just, not scrapping everything and starting over, but just bringing in a new mind. McCarthy, I'm sorry, but, it's just he has this like boomer mentality to me. I just, I'm not trying to hate on the guy, but he just, I don't think is capable of winning in this league anymore. Not at the highest level. I just believe the league has passed him by. He is just unwilling to adapt, to improve, and to just get with the times. And I just don't think he's the answer. I don't think he ever will be. So, Bobby Slowick, he would have been my choice for the next head coach of this team. Unfortunately, I think another team will sign him this offseason. So, we'll see how he does. We'll see if if I'm right on this one. But either way, I just think you needed something new. And I just hate that you're not going to get that. Brian Schottenheimer as OC, I don't think he did hardly anything for this team. It's just, more of Mike's guys, more of guys that just have been unable to adjust and to have success in many, many years. Why? What's going to change? I don't know. A lot of people also were interested in Bill Belichick. I think, I understand that, he is a legendary coach in terms of, championship pedigree, but I think he too, the league has passed him by. I'm not discrediting him for anything that he did. They had a dynasty there for so many years. But as soon as Brady walked out the door, I mean, it's been terrible. And, Bill Belichick, I'm not trying to undermine his accomplishments in any way, but I don't think that he brings the championship mentality here. I don't think that translates the way that a lot of Cowboys fans hope it would. So I was never on board with that. I just don't think that's the right decision. He just, it's been the same issue. Just, I mean, I think to me, what defines a great coach, and again, I'm not trying to hate on Belichick, I'm not trying to undermine what he did, but I think he had a very good situation in New England. The Patriot way, he had some incredible rosters over the years, but the one thing that he didn't throughout his whole career, has never been able to do, is develop coaches. And I think that really speaks to his ability as a head coach. And, again, I'm not going to argue with his championships, no one can take those away from him. But I think what defines a great head coach is someone who is able to not only coach, to the best of the ability themselves, but to elevate a team and to elevate the other coaches. I think Mike Shanahan is a great coach. And I think what he did, not only with his players, he didn't always have, the success everywhere he went. But I just think that his mind, the way he was able to develop coaches. I mean, you look at the coaching tree that has come off of him. Some of the best coaches in the NFL, I mentioned them earlier, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, others even, beyond them, Kyle Shanahan, of course, his son. I think you can't argue with that. The mind that can train young talent, from both as players and as coaches to do what they've been able to do. To me, that's what you need. And that is just so incredible, I think, just the job he was able to do. Bill Belichick just has never been able to do that, I don't know, maybe that's just not quite his style, I don't know, but just his disciples, his coaches have been terrible, as head coaches. We've seen Josh McDaniels try and fail over and over again, both with the Broncos and the Raiders, crashed and burned as a head coach. Matt Patricia, when he coached the Lions, it was a dumpster fire, among others. Every single, just player and coach, somehow it's just the Patriot way is, I mean, say what you want, but they have it down over there. But for some reason, just the success outside of that is just not there. It doesn't happen. And I just don't think that bringing that here, a new system, new everything. I don't think Bill Belichick is going to be able to establish that and get this team to a championship. I could be wrong. I guess we'll never know. But I don't think that was really the direction that this team needed to go, and I'm glad they're not going to. Disagree with me if you want, though. Let me know, did you want Bill Belichick to be this coach? And if you could have any coach, that's available, who would you want to be coaching this team? Unfortunately, it's going to be Mike McCarthy next season, but let's look beyond. Things could change, of course. You never know, not for this offseason, but going forward. Let me know, who your ideal head coach would be. But yeah, just to me, you just, I think, have settled for mediocrity once again, running it back with Mike McCarthy. It doesn't move the needle for me. So, I think that's enough talk for head coaches for now. I want to get into one last facet, and that's ownership. The one thing that can't change, and as far as we know, probably won't. It's just, we speak to this insanity thing, of coaches coming and going, players coming and going. You're always good, but never good enough. And I think that starts at the top. I think the biggest reason that this team hasn't had success in so long is because there's just no sense of urgency. If you had a system like any other team in the NFL where you had the owner up here, you had a general manager and a head coach separate from each other, not sharing titles or anything like that, the general manager of this team would have been fired decades ago. It's just the truth. I mean, the general manager of this team, you won the championships in the 90s, I think would have been fired in the very early 2000s. Again, that's around when I was born. So put that in perspective. I mean, I think 20 years ago, the general manager of this team would have been fired because you had a great Super Bowl 90s run, but you haven't done nothing since. And I think, in the dark days of the early 2000s, your general manager would have been fired. You would have hired someone new. You probably would have been on who knows what general manager at this point, but not the Cowboys. No. Jerry Jones isn't firing himself. He's not firing his son. You have accepted mediocrity for going on, 25, 30 years because there won't, and I think the biggest reason is because there won't be change up top. You're not going to fire your son. You're not going to fire yourself. There's not going to be that change. There just isn't. Like I said, any other team, your general manager would have been fired 2 decades ago. But not the Cowboys, I think that so many times, I love this team, but I understand why America hates us. Because this ownership group, they're arrogant. In the sense that, not that I don't have any respect for Jerry Jones. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. I understand that. But this team needs to stop thinking that they're above everyone else, that they're somehow special, and that they can do things their own way and expect to have success. That's just not how the league works. You're not special. You're the richest franchise in the entire world. I understand that. Jerry Jones is a master at business. He is, he has turned this team, what he bought it for, it has grown tenfold. It is the most successful business sports franchise in the world. And I give you credit. I mean, Jerry Jones, he's an incredible businessman. He is. But he is a pretty bad general manager. He is a terrible, when it comes to football operations. That's just not what he is. He's not a football guy. He played in high school, sure, he is just not a football mind. He's a businessman. And he has no business having as much power as he does when it comes to football operations. He just doesn't, because it's not who he is. Back in the 90s, when he was, the Jerry Jones that, wanted to make big splashes, Deion Sanders, and, bringing in Charles Haley, guys like that, it was different because at least he was, making things happen. You haven't done anything in terms of off season, until this year, I would say, with making the trades for Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. That was a step in the right direction, but you don't sign free agents. The last big free agent you signed was Brandon Carr in like 2012, and, defined big. He was, okay. I mean, you just don't make moves. There's no sense of urgency. Nothing ever changes. It's always, we like our guys. Maybe next year. We're so close. Yeah, we've been so close for a lot of time. And I give credit to this team for being competitive. They make it to the playoffs. But if you have 3 playoff wins and this decade, what does that really mean? Is that worth it? No. You're always good. This team is very rarely bad. You're always average to above average to, good. You rarely have those Texan stretches where you're, having the number 2 pick in the draft. But does that mean anything if you can't reach your ultimate goal? You're one of like 3 teams since the 90s to have not made it to a championship game. The other, I think, are the Lions and the Browns. Is that success? Maybe you win 10 games every year or close to it. Maybe you win 12 like you have in the past 3 years. But if you can't win a playoff game, what does it matter? It doesn't. The Texans, they were horrible. They were horrible for the last few years. I mean, they were the number 2 pick just last season. But look how they turned it around. Look how they fired their general manager. They fired their head coach. Look how they just flushed and rebuilt their team from the ground up with young minds, with a great young quarterback, with, a team that is good, but still not as good as yours. Look what they've done, though, from a general manager standpoint, bringing in a new person to change this team. Look what they've done from a coaching standpoint. And just in one season, they went from the second worst team in the league to a playoff winner. They're moving on. You're not. In 1 year, they had more progress than you've had in 20. Sure, maybe we were never quite as bad as they were, but just like that, in 1 year, they went from terrible to better than us. To me, that's just the shining example of just this insanity, this insane system of, maybe next year, we're right there. Yeah, we're close, but we're never close enough. It's always out of reach. It's like you're reaching and then the finish line just keeps moving. You're never going to get there. It's like a mirage or something. Yeah, you see there's water there, but you'll never reach it because it doesn't exist. And that's just how it feels for this team. It feels like truly making it to a championship, it feels like it just can't happen. I'm not saying it can't, but for the last 27, I think, years now, I'm not sure. Again, I wasn't alive for a chunk of that. It hasn't happened. Jerry keeps saying we're close. You haven't even made it to an NFC championship game. You haven't won 2 playoff games in a single season. You've won 3 in like 10. It's not good enough. And I'm just so afraid that as long as nothing changes from an ownership perspective, which it won't. I mean, Jerry's not selling the team. I'm just so afraid that nothing will ever change because why would it? Yeah, we'll probably win 12 games again next year. But do you think we're going to win multiple playoff games? Do you think we'll make it to the NFC, championship game? I don't think so. Super Bowl? You can dream, right? No, it's just, it's this dream, this hope that something's just going to magically change. That's not how it works in the league, in life, in anything. You can't just go back, run it back over and over again and hope something's different. No, you know, it starts with the top. We've said it with coaching, we've said it with your offseason strategy. Nothing changes, and I give Will McClay so much credit, as in his position, because this team has been incredible at drafting. That's the one thing I give them credit for. If you weren't, you would be you would not be here. You'd be much worse. So I give you credit, for drafting well and for keeping this team afloat. But until you go out and make an effort to sign free agents, to make trades, to make moves, nothing's going to change until you go find that head coach, a real head coach that can bring change, that can bring something different. Search for one, not just, okay, we'll settle for Garrett, we'll settle for McCarthy, until you stop looking for the discount options and go out and take a chance, take a risk, sign someone of caliber, nothing's going to change. They took a step in the right direction last season with Gilmore and Brandon Cooks. Bring them back. Re-sign Gilmore. Will they do that? I don't know. Brandon Cooks? I don't know. You have to continue to build. You can't make one move one year and be like, okay, there we go, I did something. No, it's got to be consistent. It's got to be different. And I'm just so afraid that with this team, with this ownership, it just never will. I don't know. I hope they prove me wrong. But until they do, what's going to change? Let me know. Let me know, just what you want to do this offseason, in any facet. If there's someone you want to draft, sign, I'd love to listen. I'm just so scared that the Joneses don't and won't, because they're stuck in their ways. They think they're exceptions. They're not. And if, not an smidge of playoff success in nearly 30 years isn't enough to show them that, I don't know what is. I really don't. They're not going to see this video. They're not. But I don't understand how they can't look in the mirror and see that maybe the issue is them. Because to me, when all else goes wrong, through all these time, it starts at the top. And until something changes there, I don't know. I just don't know how we get to where we need to be. I've mentioned the Texans. I'll mention another team in Texas. I'll mention the Texas Rangers. I did in a video a little while back. They were horrible from 2017 to 2021. They were one of the worst teams in the league. Yeah, sure. But they made changes. They fired their general manager. They brought in someone new, someone innovative, Chris Young. They brought in a coach that is capable of winning championships and has proved it time and time again in Bruce Bochy. And in one season, one with Bruce Bochy, two with the general manager, they transformed from the worst team in the league, one of them, to a World Series champion. World Series champions. That transformation, bringing in new, it happened in 2 years. 2 years. It's something the Cowboys haven't done in nearly 30. Why? Because you never fired your general manager. You never went for something new. Not since, you just haven't. And until they do, I just don't see change happening. It's been proven. Teams have done it. Teams have gone from worst to first in a matter of years. We've seen it. We've seen the Texans. We've seen the Rangers. You can look across all sports. It happens, but not with the Cowboys, because you don't fire family. NFL teams should not be a family business. I don't think so, but this one is. Job security is guaranteed. Like I said, any other general manager would have been fired decades ago, but there's no sense of urgency. And there never will be, because nothing's going to happen. There's no consequences other than, an upset fan base. If you care about this fan base, if you care about this team truly, Mr. Jones, if you care about your fans, if you care about your players, if you care about Cowboys Nation, change. I know you're not going anywhere, and I'm not saying you need to, but you have to change. You have to stop thinking that you're an exception, that you're above everyone else, that you're different, and that you can just do things the same way you've been doing it for the last 20, 30 years. You have to change. And until you do, it's going to be more of the same. You have to change. Please, Jerry, do something this offseason. Do something different. It's off to a rough start keeping McCarthy, but do something, and maybe this team can get back to where we want to be. I don't know. Thanks again for watching, guys. This was not supposed to be this long, 45 minutes. But it had to be said, I'm not sure how many people are going to see this video, but to me, it's the truth. It's the truth, and I just think that until something changes, I don't know. I just don't know when we can expect to see real results. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know myself. It's time, We've waited long enough. It's time for something to change. It's time to bring championship mentality back to Dallas, back to Arlington. We saw Jimmy Johnson firing up the guys. That was the most powerful moment I've probably ever seen as a Cowboys fan. That type of coach won you championships. That type of mentality brought 3 Super Bowls to this city. And Jerry Jones, you fired that. You threw that away. Jimmy Johnson's not coming back. It's time to find the next Jimmy Johnson. It's time to find the next leader that can change this team for the better and bring a championship culture back. It's time. And that's all I got to say. It's time for a change. And, I hope it happens sooner than later, because it's way, way overdue. It's time for a change, I am with this team till I die. I am a diehard Cowboys fan, and that is something that I will never change. I promise that. I'm with you. I'm with this team till the end. But it's time for something different. It's time that we see results. It's time that something changes. The fans, the true ones, will never change. We'll be with this team, Dallas Cowboys for life, through the highs and the lows, through the heartbreak. But I just hope that we'll also be here for the triumph. Thanks again for watching, guys. I will see you guys next time. Go Cowboys for life.